So from here, we're going to go on to another use of strands, a very cool one, and another node that we'll be bringing in to show you. We're going to go from here to building a road. So here's what we'll be making. And let's get started. So we're going to need a graph, and we're going to need the compound that makes the road. Again, this is another one for you to go through and take a look. Just call this make road. This is one I've prepared earlier for you. It has some settings. It has UVs. You can adjust all of these settings, and of course you can go inside, and I've annotated it for you. That's about all we're going to talk about for that one, because it's really good practice to see how other people make their compounds, the decisions they've made in their coding. And in this case, I've made sure that these are quick explainers of what's going on inside of each of these compounds. So have a look, have fun. But we're going to make a road. So what we need to do this is this needs a strand. So let's get a strand in. So in this case, we're going to go in from Maya. We'll go to create curve tools. Let's just do an EP curve is fine. And we'll start up here and just keep clicking till we get the shape we want. When we're ready, press enter. And you can do some editing by going to the control vertex and just like this, maybe a bit more there. If you want the road to be smoother, you can press 3 and it'll smooth it out in the viewport for you so you get a better idea of the curves. Just do something like that. It's just a simple road. Maybe pull that one that way, that one that way a bit. Cool. Go back to object mode, and this is very important. This is the curve we're going to base everything on. I would just like to scale these a little bit and pull them down, and maybe pull that one out just a smidge more. Yeah, that's looking more like it. So we're good. So road curve. I'm going to hide that straight away because I don't like having my Maya and my Bifrost visible when I'm working on Bifrost. We'll just drag that in. We can get rid of our input. All good. So here's our road curve shape. If we were just to smack that into our output just to get an idea of what it looks like, again, we have a low res curve. Let's go in here and get that up to something like 16 to get a nice smooth curve. And because somebody gave you a compound to make things, we can do this. Strand goes in, output goes out. Now you have a road. So what I'm going to do is turn on that so you can see the divisions in there. And you might notice too that there are some settings here, like I can change how much the road banks on the corners, even to the negative if I want to. And I'm going to go for 10 maybe. No, let's just go for 5 for now. I can change the width of the road. The UVs I'm not going to touch. I'll leave that for you to play with. And if I want to, I can change how much of the road we've got. So I can sweep that road. And remember, we started drawing up here. We finished drawing down here. So this is sweeping from the last to the beginning. And that's using the point ratio I showed you before. But that's, I got to stop giving you clues about what's in that compound because I want you to go in and have a look at that compound. All right, so this is pretty much all we're going to do with this compound here with the make road that you've been given. What our job is to put something like streetlights along the side of that road. So we need to think about how we're going to do that. And the very first thing we're going to need to do is work out what our streetlights are going to be. So the easiest way and the most logical way to do that is with instances. So I'm going to go and get a streetlight model. The streetlamp.fbx, we're going to import that. That's tremendously big right now, which is fine. We'll be able to sort that in a minute. And it comes in called null1. So let's just street lamp and hide it. Now, we've done instancing before, and that's fine. You don't need to scatter to create instances. Create instances just wants points. It doesn't really care what those points come from. So if I plug in my strand here, and I just make a cube. And let's just for fun make the cube 5 times as high as it is wide and long, and plug that in. And then we'll take a look at that. So you can see what it's done is it's instanced a cube on. Let's just turn off the road for now. So we'll do our trick again. We'll grab that, put in an if statement, and that way we can turn the road on and off as we like. And we will go to wireframe mode. And just so we can see what's going on, let's put these into a point scope. So we can see the points of this curve, right? So I'll change that to color real fast. We'll make it red. And default size can be 0.2. Disk is fine, so let's pop that out as well. And you can see that it's instancing a cube on every point in that strand. And again, because it's non-destructive, because it's procedural, if I change the number of points in the strand by changing the segment multiplier, I get more or less points. This is going to become important later. Let's get that back to 16. And we'll come out of wireframe mode. So the easiest way to get streetlights to run along this road is to instance them on this curve. But you know, we have a problem with that, is that the curve is in the middle of the road. If I move the curve, I'm moving the whole road. If I change select the curve, go to control vertex, I probably have to show it for that to work. Yeah, if I grab a control vertex and try and move it out, it's moving everything with it. So it's all just linked back to this curve. This is really good practice for building a tool in Bifrost through Maya. So we have a Maya object, we do some Bifrost, we output that object, and that becomes whatever we do inside the Bifrost is the tool. We'll get to that later on in the course, but for now, just remember that. File that away in the back of your head. So we need a duplicate of this curve, and we need this curve to match the shape of the road as close as we can possibly get. I'm just going to really quickly get rid of these because we don't need those anymore. And we probably don't need those anymore. And then, yeah, things are going to break. So I just need to break those two. Delete those. And we're back to where we were. So how do I duplicate this curve and how do I make sure it keeps its shape? Easiest way to do that is if we update the basis. Remember that was to get us our tangent, normal, and binormal. And then I just put in a displace points, just like you did with the terrain, just like we've used it a couple of times now, like this. And let's have a terminal so we can see what we're doing. You can see there. You know what I should do? I should do one of these. There we go. So it's just black. It's great. There's two strands here. Let's put in a sign. Put an assigned diagnostic material on that one, but this time we're going to make it red so we know it's our master strand. Okay, so there's our master strand. I've now made a duplicate of that strand and I've displaced it. Because I haven't put anything into the weights, all of the weights are considered to be 1, which means it's doing the same displacement on every point. That's what I want. But I don't want my streetlights hovering above the middle of the road. I want them to one side, right? So for that, I can just put in a different vector into the displacement vector, and I've got it moved across along the point binormal, which is exactly what we want to do. So it's not quite big enough, and what I'm going to need to do to make this all tie together as some sort of coherent thing is I need this. I need the width that I'm using for the road. Okay, so let's just create value node there. There we go. And what this is basically setting up, but we're basically setting up controls at this point. So the width control on the road is literally how wide that road is. Okay. If I take this set of vectors here, my point binormals, and I multiply them by the width of the road and then plug them in, you can see that my strand, and it's offset because the road is banking and the strand is not, which is fine for now. Actually, let's just, if I make max bank 0, then it's really difficult to see, but the strand is exactly on the edge of that road. So what we're going to need to do is set up another control, and to keep it art directable, we're going to add another control where we're just going to add a little bit to this. Plug that in. So this is, remember, this is what we're multiplying our displacement by. I'm going to create another value node, and let's get sensible while we're here. Change that over to name display node, turn it to name, and we'll call this width offset. There we go. Let's do the same over here. Road width. All of these we'll try and make into controls later. So now I've got my width offset, and I can start increasing that width offset, and you can see what it's doing. I can also make it negative. You can see what it's doing. So what we're doing is we're adjusting the length of the vector that we are displacing along, which is what this displacement vector is. They're all unit vectors with a length of 1. What we're doing now is multiplying that length by multiplying by a float. So this allows us to have quick and easy and fairly painless control over where we want our streetlights to be. So, let's just move this somewhere like there. You can have a look from the top, and you can see that it follows the shape of the road pretty closely because it's using the binormal, which is the direction from the point out along the surface of the road. We don't want just a single line of streetlights, do we? We want one on both sides of the road. That's going to mean duplicating it again. So I could go through this entire thing again, or I could just duplicate my displace points. And really all I'd need to do is negate this vector. And then if I move this along, and we'll copy that too. If I assign a diagnostic material, and let's just make this another color anyway. We'll make it some kind of nice blue color. And I plug this into the terminal as well. Now you can see I've got a line on both sides of the road, and it's all controlled by one setting. And even if I change my road width, you can see that they're staying attached. It's a nice little procedural solution. And again, our master strand isn't touched. So that's pretty much how we're going to do that. These two are what we're going to instance on. And we're going to start getting into a little bit of compound building now, just basically so that you can get used to it. We're not going to do anything like publishing just yet, but that will be coming later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of these guys, this guy and this guy, group them. Okay, so that just makes Control G is what groups them. If you're going to do it manually, create compound like that. This just wraps them all up in one compound. If I dive in here and press L on my input and my output, you can see it's pretty much kept all the layout that we had. And it's the same nodes just inside a new compound. It has also set up your inputs for you. Okay. They haven't got the right names or anything, but we'll work on that now. So I can move this port to the top because I want my strands coming in first. And we'll just jump back out here. This is our road width. So let's make that road width from road master width. And this is our width offset. So road width offset. And this compound can be construct instance strands. So we're still working with strands. Everything here is based on one strand coming in and one instance object. Okay, and then we're just going to need to give these guys names as well. So if you don't remember which is which, I mean I do, but if you don't, just disconnect one and have a look. So looking from the top, that's my left hand strand. And this is my right hand strand. So there you go, we've now set up a compound that constructs our instance strands and allows us to change our offset. That kind of thing. You can too remove that. It will default to 0, which means that it's, if I just turn off my road, it might help. Now they're sitting exactly on the edge of the road because there's no offset, it's just using the width. So you can just come in here and just increase that back to what you're happy with, or what your boss is happy with. I'm going to go with 1 for now. Got a nice little stretch of road. Let's get some streetlights on that. Now, there's a reason I output these separately. I could have put these out as a single object or an array of objects, but there's a reason I did it separately, because we're going to need to do things to the scatters. Okay, so let's just do our left-hand one first. So I'm just going to straight up do what we did before, create instances. So of course now we're going to need our streetlight, which is here. Let's just drag that in like that, hook it up to our instance geometries, and we'll use our old friend, the terminal. Just going to get rid of my right-hand side for now. Plug that into the diagnostic, and you've immediately got some very large streetlights on a very small road, which is fine. We've done instancing before, so we know that straight away we need to change our point scale. And instead of just doing randomized point scale, because I don't want to randomize these, most streetlights are the same size and moving onwards facing the same way. So let's just set geoproperty. So what I'm going to do is just set the size property of these points that are going into the instances, because these are points right now. They're in a strand, but they're regarded as points. I'm going to set this to a number I want. This is another control. Let's have a value. I quite like setting up a value and then not including it in my final compound. And of course, this needs to be point size. Everything disappears, and everything disappears because point size of 0 means it's scaling these guys to 0. So let's just start pulling that up. We can get to a point where we quite like the size, which is somewhere like that. So it's really quite small, which is cool. And of course, we are pointing in exactly the wrong way. All right? Because if you have a look at our points here, we don't have an orientation on these points. We have the basis, we have the binormal, we have the tangent, and we have the normal. That's great, but that doesn't give us an angle at which the points are pointing, and we need the points to point inwards towards the center. So luckily there's a node for that. Strands basis to orientation. Put those in. Strands coming out, strands. Oh, straight away. Our streetlights are pointing exactly the way we want them to. We will be coming back to this later to talk about rotate radians, but before we do that, there are an awful lot of streetlights there. I mean, I can't think of even a highway that has streetlights that close together. So a couple of things we can do here. We can change the entire number of points. But the problem with that, of course, is that our road loses its smooth. It becomes chunkier and chunkier and chunkier. So we need to find a way. We need to find a way to knock out some of these instances. How on earth are we going to do that? What I'm actually going to do is edit the points. So right now, if we take a look at this one, this is just our create instance. Well, this is our strand, actually. You can see that there are 113 points in here, which means there's 113 instances in here. So what I need to do is knock some of those out before it goes into here. Now, I don't need to touch my strand. My strand can stay there. That'll give us a nice curve. But I do need to take some of the strand's points and kill them. So here's a way to do that. I'm going to take our strand. I'm going to ignore all of this for now. Take our strand and get the point positions. The point positions, because this is basically my array of positions, right? So I need, the next one is get array indices. I need the indices of this array. So it's gotten the array indices. I can change the type here if I want to, but I like long is fine. What I want now, the indices of the array is just the index of each one. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. What I want to do is I want to knock out some of them. And I don't know how many I want to knock out yet, but I want to knock out maybe every second one, or every third one, or every fifth one. So the way I'm going to do that is by using a modulo. What modulo does is divides one number by another and gives you the remainder. So in our divisor, let's create a value node because it's going to become another control, just like this one. In fact, when we're doing controls, let's set ourselves up with a habit of naming them. So we need to go to show name. We're going to call this nth index because it's every 4th, every 5th, every 6th. Okay, and we'll set this, we'll start with 4. So what this does is it divides every index in this array by this number and then gives you what's left over, the remainder. So what I want is only the ones that are equal to 0, so every 4th one. So I'm just going to put down a little bit of logic, equal to 0. And I want everything true in this array. Find all true in array. This is going to give me the index in this array of every modulo result that is equal to 0. So this will give me my indices. Now, if I take my point positions, get from, so get that array, plug those in there. Now I've got all of the points whose index has nothing left over from this. And it's time to just move things around a little bit. So we'll grab this guy, and we'll do that, and grab that guy too, and we'll move this along. Going to need to keep our organizing fairly strong here. And at this point, I'm going to construct a new strand. Now, this strand isn't doing anything but keeping these points. That's it. That's all it's doing. So if I plug this strand into my instance setup, all I'm getting is every 4th one. And I can change that. I can say, okay, I only want every 3rd one, or every 14th, or every 7th, or every 21st. I don't know, 7 or 8 is pretty nice. Something like that. That's looking pretty good. So now I've managed to knock out the ones I don't want. Let's pretend we're on a motorway and these are evenly spaced. This will only give you evenly spaced. If you wanted to do this randomly, you'd have to do this a different way, but you would still use a modulo. You would just generate a random array of the same number and do a different logic here that basically said, are you equal, or you're less than this, or you're greater than this. But for now, we just want these nice and even because we're working in an environment department and we need to scatter streetlights on a road because that's a task that you're probably going to end up having to do. And then add lights to them, which you could do in various different ways. So let's just say I'm happy with that. Now, this is my new instance. What I would like to do now is get them on the other side as well. So let's just put all of our controls together, or at least somewhere we can remember what they are later, because, you know, the old brain power starts to go down after a while. Move that along. So it's time to bring back our other strand. And let's just have a think about how we're going to, I mean, we could just duplicate all of this and, you know, do it again. I don't know if that's going to be the best way to do it, but definitely what I want to do straight away is make a compound out of this modulo setup. So let's call this every nth instance. This takes in the strand and puts out a new strand made up of every nth index. So I can copy that name, I can go in here, rename it, paste it, and then delete that. 0 is going to give you zeros. 1 is going to give you every single one. 8 is what we had, and 8 is what I like. Now that we've got that in a compound, I'm much more happier to do it absolutely again for this one. Okay? So we could also make an instancing compound to do the same thing, but I don't think we need to for now. So let's just copy and paste this compound. We're going to do it on our right-hand strand, and let's quite happily just for now, I'm just going to absolutely duplicate this, except that. So we've just got another set of instance being built. I'm going to use the same mesh, and I'm going to use the same master scale as per, and we'll just pop this out as well. So let's hook up this one to it. All right, so that was easy to get them on both sides of the road. A couple of things we have to deal with. First is they need to be pointing the opposite way of these, and that's what this rotate radians is for. Okay, what I want to do is rotate the Y. You can see if I do that, they rotate, but I need to rotate the Y by 180 degrees exactly. 180 degrees in radians happens to be pi. So I can go pi, like that. This will just give me pi, 3.14159 bar. Okay, I need that to be a vector, so quick and easy way to make it a vector is, especially if you only want to set one of them, you can do scale out a vector, or you can put down a vector value that you set to be a vector 3, and you can open out its inputs and just drop pi into Y. Then we put that in there, and it's absolutely 180. So that's got one problem sorted out. The other one is that you can have, well, it's not a problem, it's a style choice, my bad. You can have streetlights that are absolutely facing each other. That is absolutely valid, that's fine. You know, big motorways do that, all that kind of thing. What happens if we want to offset this? Well, we could do something like, okay, well maybe we only want every fourth one, but then you've got more on one side than the other. We don't want that. What we want to do is essentially offset this modulo. So if I say, so what's basically coming out of here, because this is set to 8 at the moment, what's coming out of here is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's what will be in this array. I can show you that. Minimum 0, maximum 7. That's cool. So what happens if I subtract? Let's say I subtract 4. Now my array coming out is from -4 to 3, which means it's still hitting the zeros. And because I chose 4, it's exactly in the middle of the 8. It's still every 8th one, it's just every 8th one shifted by 4. 4 is half of 8. Everybody's happy. Let's put this in as a control. So what I want to do is put this in as a conditional control. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is take that and get half of it. This is going to be a little bit interesting on odd numbers because this is an integer and we'll convert it when there's a 0.5. Well, you know, we can actually do better than that. Let's take that and we'll make it a float. Like so. Okay. Then we can do half of, like this, and then we can do a round. Round to nearest, which will just give you, if it's 0.51, it'll give you the next one. If it's 0.49, it'll give you the previous one. And at that point, we can get this back to a long. And what we've essentially done is got a rounded integer. Let's group that. So we've got a compound, we'll just call this rounded half. Go in here and hook this up to the output. Now what we can do is we're going to use an if statement again. I want the one that isn't offset to be my default, which means if this is off, I want this to happen. I just need to move this down here and move this along a bit. But if it's on, I want my offset to happen. And now I don't need to set 4. What I've got is I'm generating one from the other. You can see that these didn't change. And I think you'll find if I put a watch point on there, it's going to be 4 because 4 is half of 8. Awesome. That's all working. And then I can put this into there. And you can see it's snapped back to what it was because this by default is set to false. Let's drag our condition out there, and we'll just call this offset by half. Now I'm only going to do an offset by half. You could, by leaving that 4 in there and piping it out as a control, have an offset by anything. Okay, and it will work because modulo is cool like that. But I'm just going to do offset by half. We can turn that on, and there they are. And there we go. Let's get back up here. So let's tidy ourselves up a bit and get our old friend Pi out there. So by the virtue of having somebody give me a road compound that I can use, which I've got going on here, it's all fine. And because I can take my strand and do geometry operations on it, like displace and all of that kind of thing, then I can very, very quickly and easily build this. And what's really nice about this is if I turn this back on in Maya, take a control vertex, everything is still connected from our shape in Maya. So if you have a city generator that builds you a city and builds you strands along the middle of the roads, then you can just use this to put streetlights in, or rubbish bins, or fences, or whatever other set dressing you want to have around that road. You can use something like this. Okay, so these can be random too. They can be randomized. You can do all that. Have a play at it, see what you can get out of it. But that is essentially how we get the road.